the things that each of us does from our various vantage points are critical for not just meeting the needs of people in communities, but for giving voice to what those needs are, to ensuring that this thing we call America, call the United States, talk about perfecting as a union, requires all of us. And at a time when we are seeing, feeling, and experiencing direct attack on these very things we do, not only lawfully, but for the ideals we share as a country. So we have at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, in our 75th year of existence, as the nation's oldest and largest civil rights coalition that formed because we see what it means and why it matters to have a more perfect union, and to ensure that every single person in this country is not only treated with respect and dignity, including the workers who have helped us come together today, who work for the National Press Club. Thank you. Becky Pringle will be here representing National Education Association and Labor, because we were able to be here because of philanthropy. And we welcome John Palfrey, who's the president of the MacArthur Foundation. And because we know how critically important it is to have basic needs met, like our health care, like our ability to have no government come between us and our doctors, but also that we get the health care services we need, which is why we're so grateful to have Alexis McGill Johnson, who is here in both her capacities for Planned Parenthood, both its C3 and Planned Parent Action Fund, its C4. And Nick Turner, who knows what it means not only to think about advocating for justice, but making sure a system of criminal justice creates more public safety. And does so, that includes federal grants across both administrations. From the Vera Institute, that has many of us know, and has worked across party lines, across place, even across countries. Thank you for being here, Nick. And our institutions of higher education, which, as we know, and even some of the founding fathers reminded us that it is central to democracy to have an education and access to what higher education brings. And I'm very privileged to have met for the first time Lynn Pasquerella, who is the president of the American Association of Universities and Colleges, but who also, we share an alma mater because my father and uncle went to University of Rhode Island, where she was both an academic and in the administration. So I'm going to call her family. But we are here because we are also groups that have spoken up in unity across our organizations, and for the first time, we are speaking up together across our sectors to say it is about all of us, and we also support each other. And with that, let's get started. I'm going to ask very simple questions, and a reminder that if anyone has questions, please give a note card to staff. Note cards in the back, so just raise your hand and we'll make sure you get one. But I just want to start with a very basic question for each of you. And Becky, I'll start with you. Why does what you do in labor matter? And why is it so critically important to confront the attacks?
So, good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Becky Pringle. I taught middle-level learners the wonders of science for 31 years. I now have the honor of being the president of this nation's largest labor union, the National Education Association. Our 3 million members understand that they not only in this season, I'm not using the word moment either, because we have a lot of work to do over a long period of time, that our 3 million members understand that they not only have a responsibility during this time to teach, nurture, drive, feed, nurse, counsel their students, but they also understand that in this period where we are very close to an authoritarian reign, what Tarso Ramos called, an expert on U.S. Far right and authoritarianism, called that moment at which you cross, where so much power is consolidated that it is very difficult and it'll take a long time to undo it. We are very close to elections not mattering. We're really close to that. And as educators, we understand, along with journalists, our role in making sure that our public is educated about that. For us, we know that at the center of this or any democracy is the ability for every student to have access to a free, quality public education. That is at the heart of any democracy, so that students have that ability to be critical thinkers, to be collaborative problem solvers, to ask really good questions. And if we are not providing that opportunity, as you see, this administration is quickly dismantling a department, quickly taking away funds right now from our students and our classrooms, from our families right now, and putting that very right in peril. So we are standing up in this moment, Maya, not only the educators within the NEA and the AFT, I see some of our AFT friends out there, but I also see some of our other labor leaders as well throughout our labor movement, because we understand that it is our responsibility right now to disrupt, to fight against, and you always hear me say this, we can't just fight against. We actually have to fight forward. We have to fight for that vision of America that when we say every student, we actually mean every student. We are very clear about what it is we have been called to do, and we are clear that we cannot do it by ourselves. That's what solidarity is. That's definitely what union is. And as you talked about this cross-sector, cross-movement, a coalition of folks who are coming together, that's exactly what is needed right now.
Becky Pringle, and we will come back also to those impacts. John Palfrey, really same question from the vantage point of philanthropy. How philanthropy is needed to come out and speak publicly. Why?
Maya Wiley, thank you for bringing us together, and Becky for getting us going with such inspiring words. I'm John Palfrey, and I lead the MacArthur Foundation, which is based in Chicago. But we've been working together as a sector, as all of us have across our sectors in recent months, because we feel that there's a very, very important set of rights that we need to ensure stand in America. And those begin with, for our perspective, the right to speak freely, to say what you need to say. This is not a new thing. We fought a revolution for it, I think, in 1776, and we have been maintaining it and growing it over time, but also a freedom to give and a freedom to invest the resources that we have privately in this country, and that's under assault. And the 501c3 tax status and so forth, these are things that have been put into play for the first time in anybody's memory, as far as I can tell, and in a serious and dangerous way. So that's why, Maya, that I'm sitting here and not in our community, trying to give out money today, but rather with all of you in this setting. I think it would set an extremely dangerous precedent if we were to allow politicians from any party, this is a nonpartisan, non-political statement, but if whoever's in power get to tell private, nonprofit, charitable organizations to whom to give would be a mistake. We haven't done that in America. We should not do that in America. That matters a great deal. So we will stand for that proposition. And this is a broad coalition that we have together, which ranges from, all parts of the political spectrum and all parts of this country. And that, I think, is a very, very important thing. We do not want to do something in this moment that's going to curtail that freedom. And the why, I think, goes one level down. I'm sure we'll get to this. But when the government, for one reason or another, is not serving communities. For one reason or another, can't pay for the school lunches or the teachers that need to get paid and so forth. Philanthropy is available to do some of that work. We can't fill for the government, but we need to be able to step into a community where the government, for one reason or another, cannot or has chosen not to do that work. If you take away the right for the government to do it, and then you defund all of those kinds of good things, and then you say, charity, you can't step in and do it, we are literally not going to meet the needs of this country. We literally will not be the diverse, amazing, strong, thriving America that we all want to live in. So that's why we're here.
And philanthropy helps make sure that advocacy can advocate. And so thank you, John, for that. Speaking of the work that has to get done and how it gets funded and why it matters, Alexis, Planned Parenthood obviously has been under attack for a very long time for a lot of reasons. But what's different now? What do we need to know? And why is it so important to keep fighting?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Maya, and thank you for the leadership of the Leadership Conference convening us today. You know, Planned Parenthood is, as you know, the nation's largest single provider of sexual and reproductive health care across this country. The Federation of Planned Parenthood is made up of 48 affiliates that provide services, 9 million services every year to patients across this country at over 600 health centers. And a third of those patients, or a third of all women have been to a Planned Parenthood in their lifetime. Half of those patients have come to us on Medicaid. And so when I think about the moment that we are in, and I think about, as President Pringle started off the conversation speaking about authoritarianism and the role that tyranny is playing right now, you know, the first thing that an authoritarian government often does is they cut off the rights to women, right? Because it's the easiest way to control half of the population. And we are watching the impact of, obviously, the Dobbs decision, but an erosion of our ability to control our bodies over the last decade because of the consolidation of power, not just in this administration, but literally in state houses, in the judiciary, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so watching the kind of forced compliance, or watching people obey in advance, as some of our scholars of tyranny would say, has been particularly devastating to the care sector right now. You know, we are, as you said, Maya, Planned Parenthood is used to being under attack. We're used to scenario planning at every turn. But this moment feels different. The ability of the conversations that are happening in Congress right now to gut Medicaid, $800 billion taken away from the people who rely on it, for tax breaks for billionaires, is one of the cruelest, most chaotic things I think we've ever experienced. What that would mean for Planned Parenthood health centers, you know, would actually just be devastating. It would mean closure of health centers. It would mean the impact on many providers and residents who actually are paid by Medicaid as they train and learn in many of our hospitals across the country. It would mean the devastation of the hospital sector in rural areas in particular. You know, about 2/3 of our health centers are in rural areas as well, which means that we oftentimes are the first point of entry for many citizens, you know, and on in this country. And the ways in which these attacks are coming are really intended, again, to take away the safety net that John spoke about. We're the safety net of the safety net. And while we are, you know, a critical part of the public health infrastructure, I like to say that we're a health system that strengthens the public health infrastructure. We are not the government, so we have to rely on both access to federal and state and local dollars, as well as philanthropy, to do that work. So it appears that we could be hit at all sides in our ability to provide critical care to communities.
Thank you. Nick, picking up with you, I mean, we've heard from Becky Pringle the central importance that unions are playing in trying to make sure kids can learn. We've heard from John about the central importance of the freedom to give and how that supports people, and from Alexis, the relationship between delivering healthcare services and government, and why we need them. You're coming from a vantage point that includes the direct attacks of this administration on you as an institution like Planned Parenthood, but in a different way. But tell us what the attacks have been like and why it matters.
Well, Maya, thank you very much for having me here today, and I'm so grateful for your leadership and providing this platform for collective power. I'm Nick Turner. I'm the president and director of the Vera Institute of Justice and Vera Action. We work to fight mass incarceration and to support immigrant rights and to make sure that this country has those two systems provide safety, accountability, and justice for everyone in all 50 states, regardless of the color of people's skin, regardless of where people come from. I'm here today representing the sector of work we do, but really representing the nonprofit sector as well. And if I were to sort of zoom out for a moment, I would say that, what we've seen a lot over the course of the past few months is an administration that is committed to consolidating power and then also to kneecapping and silencing institutions that work in ways that are contrary to its aims. So we've seen a lot in the media about the attacks on law firms and on academia, and on the media and the nonprofit sector, often referred to as NGOs, non-governmental organizations, is a pillar that this administration is going after now. What does that mean for people? That means that NGOs, organizations that provide services that everyday Americans need in order to survive and to thrive, are under attack. So food banks, adult services and protection, foster care for young people, victim services, drug treatment programs, early childhood education. All of these things are under attack, and all of these things are things that Americans in every city, in every county, in every state rely upon. And so it's important to sort of understand the breadth and the depth of this attack. Running Vera, we are committed again to safety, accountability, and justice in this country, and I will talk a little bit later about about our own experience with this administration. But I think the important thing to know is that every year Vera helps to reduce the harm that is felt by people who are touched by the criminal justice system or the immigration system. And so that means people who might be experiencing a mental health breakdown, 911 is called, and we want to make sure that mental health specialists come to serve them and give them the care that they need. Or for people who have paid their debt for a crime they might have committed, to be able to be put on a pathway to success, to a law-abiding life, to be able to care for their families and to contribute to their communities, to communities that are fighting gun violence, and to victims and survivors of violence and trafficking who need the help of these systems. This is the work of our organization that has been under attack. And so what it means is that these human beings, again, in every part of this country, doesn't matter if it's a red state, a blue state, or a purple state, is being harmed by what this administration is doing. And so I'm here standing for those folks.
Thank you. And Lynn, as someone who's been on your side of the fence, you've been an educator, John has too, but an educator and an administrator in higher ed, but now leading the associations of American universities and colleges. What have our higher education institutions been experiencing, and why does it matter?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This truly is a moment of enormity for American higher education, and it's one that lends a new sense of urgency to the work that we do at AAC&U. Our mission is to advance the democratic purposes of higher education by promoting equity, innovation, and excellence in liberal education. We believe that there's an inextricable link between the liberal education we offer our students and our nation's historic mission of educating for democracy. We seek to position our students for success in work, citizenship, and life by empowering them with critical thinking skills, with the capacity to be mindful of ideological filtering, and to engage in moral imagination, imagining what it's like to be in the shoes of another different from oneself. That is more important than ever in this world of increasing polarization and partisanship. And we know our colleague, Tony Carnevale, who worked at the Georgetown Center for Education and the Workforce, released a report on taming authoritarian attitudes and points to the fact that American higher education is distinctive in its liberal education tradition. And that mitigates authoritarian tendencies by empowering individuals to speak across differences, not be threatened by disagreement. The unprecedented governmental overreach that we have seen, that has frozen vital federal research funds, that has attempted to control the curriculum by limiting programs and initiatives in diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is arresting people and deporting them for engaging in freedom of expression. The list goes on, but what it does is it attacks the fundamental principles of American higher education: academic freedom, institutional autonomy, and shared governance. And these are not new principles. And this is not the first attack that's been launched on institutions of higher education. What's different about this moment is the nature and scope of the attacks. There is a true flood the zone initiative that is being enacted. But this places us at risk. And the Supreme Court, in looking at some of these past cases as far back as 1957, has said that academic freedom is not valuable just to higher education, but to our nation and to the world. And they point to the fact that academic freedom, because higher education serves a public good, includes the right of institutions to determine who gets admitted, what is taught, how it is taught, and by whom. Every one of those principles has been undermined and upended by executive orders, dear colleague letters, legislation at the federal and state levels. We need to pay attention to the ways in which this calls into question and poses an existential threat, not only to higher education, but to democracy. And I think back about Lyndon Johnson when he signed the Higher Education Act and talked about in Southwest Texas College, that there the seeds were planted in him that affirmed in him this conviction that higher education is essential not only for individuals in terms of personal achievement and fulfillment, but for the nation in terms of safeguarding freedom and a civil society, and for the world, because higher education places reason over force. And this is what is at stake, and we must now more than ever make clear to those in the communities in which we serve what is truly at stake.
Amen. I wrote so many things down that you each said. I want to take a moment to knit something together about why, as the Civil Rights Coalition, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, why every single thing we have heard here is central to the civil rights community, because it's all civil rights. I mean, literally, when we talk about democracy, we're talking about civil rights, and the attack on rights is happening across these institutions. But it also matters for real people. But I could, and I'm going to pick up on Lynn, come back to you, Becky, but to just the fact that you said the word equity, and that you said the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are not only lawful, they are an expression of ensuring that we are protecting and advancing civil rights laws that are on the books, and that we spent we spent more than 75 years. John took us back already.
I went for 17.
You went to, some of us from enslaved families would go back a little further, but we're on the same page. But the point is, this has been a progression in this country of ensuring that we have protections in every single thing every single speaker has said. I could pull forward and point to the civil rights implication and laws at stake, but the Constitution is also what we call civil rights. And we fought a whole civil war to have the amendments to that Constitution that give body, breadth, and experience to all the things you just heard. So, Becky, coming back to you, but at the end of the day, it's because it's about people. It's because we're about protecting and serving people. And so, Becky, coming back to you, labor unions are under attack. Can you say a little bit, and you said why, and I'm giving you the opportunity to ground it even more for us, what those attacks are and why it matters to our kids in classrooms, because the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, live to serve students. So say more about that, and then I'll ask you to do the same with philanthropy, John, and go down the line.
So I'll start first with the question about unions. Absolutely, unions are under attack, and this administration was very clear. As much as the president wanted to walk away from his commitment to implement Project 2025, we've seen every single aspect of that framework at record speed being implemented. And part of that was to destroy the right of workers to come together, to have a union, to have that collective voice. And we know how important that is in this country. Unions built the middle class. We know that. We all know that. And we know that for them to have the right to have a voice in their workplace for safety, for making a wage that allows them to take care of their families, that allows them to contribute to their community and to this country is critical and at the foundation of our democracy. And that's why you are seeing us rising up, and I don't know, I'll say it now, and tomorrow, May Day, is a day that we're going to be commemorating that historic commitment, not only here in the United States, but all over the world, where we will have actions in thousands and thousands of cities across this country, reminding us of why it is important for workers to have that right to organize, to build a better society for all of us. You said something that I have to repeat, Maya. I feel like I have to say it. Every speech I give, every group I'm in, I need them to say the words. Say the words. Say the words. Diversity is the strength and power of this country. Equity. All that says is that for us, at least, we will make sure that every student has what they need when they need it. Inclusion. Building an environment where our students have those mirrors so they can see themselves, but they also have those windows so they can see others. That's what we're talking about. And access, so that our students with disabilities have the services they need so they can also live into their brilliance. Say the words, say them. And remember, they are at the core of the values of this country. What does that mean for our kids? What does that mean? We know with this administration moving, as I said, at record speed to gut everything, and everything impacts education. Every institution, every democratic institution impacts our kids. So it necessarily means that class sizes will rise. It necessarily means that we will have students who are not able, after they did everything we asked them to do, they're not able to go to college. It necessarily means that we will have fewer educators in the classroom. It necessarily means that students will not have the resources and supports they need. Who doesn't want to feed the babies? Who don't want to do that? Who doesn't? I can go look down. I can tell you who don't want to do it. The cuts to SNAP, the nutrition program for our kids, and CHIP, the health program for our kids. I forget who already I think it was Alexis mentioned Medicare. I don't know how many people know that almost 50% of our students rely on Medicare for their health insurance.
Medicaid.
Can our kids come to school ready to learn if they are sick. If they
Medicaid
are
also
hungry,
pays for the school nurse.
it pays for the school nurse and the counselors as we talk about mental health. So you got me worked up now, Maya, with that question.
I actually don't think it takes much, but that's why you're here.
Worked up. But I want to say this. That's why we sued them. That's why we sued them. That's why we did it. And we were not alone. The AFT sued them, and the NAACP sued them. The ACLU joined us because we said, hell no, you are not going to take Title I funds away from our schools and tell us that we can't teach the true history of this country. No, we're not standing for that. And we won an injunction and stopped this administration from forcing administrators to sign a letter saying they will not teach anything or anything touch diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. We are not done yet, Maya. We are not done yet.
All right now. This is what we're here for. Becky does have a heart out at 10. It's not 10. But I'm glad you got all that out. And we'll just add, one of the sectors under attack are law firms, many of which, because they provide pro bono, which means they don't charge, to represent people whose rights are being violated. And it is actually one of the reasons that they have been under attack. Now, those law firms are not here today because they are litigating. Well, I can't speak for them. I won't speak for them. We understand that when people are in litigation, they can't be at sessions like this because they can't talk about anything that might implicate their cases in court. Let me say it that way. But I wanted to mark it because it's such a critical point of your points. And I also want to remind everybody that it was protest from the civil rights community. It was lawsuits from our history of the civil rights community. It was donors and funders willing to fund that work, that one free lunch in schools, that one Title I, that one Medicaid, that said we should have a public safety system that works, that fought for greater access to higher education, all has come from a mighty coalition. Thank you, Becky. But I just called upon the resources part of this, John, and you said so eloquently why it mattered at the top. Ground a little more in what is happening to philanthropy right now and a little bit more about why it matters.
Absolutely. And, I think it matters because of all the things that everybody up here has said, that we require the ability across our country to support this work. And we all know that the government isn't doing enough to feed the babies, that there's not enough for healthcare in rural areas. There's not enough down the line to support, we over-incarcerate in this country and to support people returning to their communities and so forth. So there isn't enough resource. And if you also kneecap those of us who are seeking to do what we can, whether it is in a rural area trying to ensure that there is food in where there should be for a school breakfast or lunch, or it is supporting the healthcare, or it is the access and opportunity for a disabled young person to come into a program. These are the things that I think philanthropy does from Idaho to Iowa, from New Jersey to North Carolina, all across this country, literally in 50 states. This is what we do every single day, and I feel a little guilty that I'm here in Washington, D.C. and not out there doing it in our home community. A little like you said, the law firms are in court right now. But it is important, I think, for us to say we're not the front line. We are behind the scenes. We are quiet people who dress up in suits and like this sometimes, I realize. And we are not as maybe eloquent and fiery as those of us who are doing the real work. But it is an essential part of the story. And that freedom to give, that freedom to invest, I think is a very necessary part of this. And yes, it is because we believe in diversity, equity, inclusion at our foundation, and we're going to keep doing that. There are others who are believing in a variety of things. There's some people who want to support those who are teaching about 1619, 1776, 1861, 1964. It all matters. And my argument would be to say we shouldn't have politicians telling us, what are you teaching in the schools? What are you funding? Who are you supporting? That has absolutely no business of the United States government, in my view. 501c3 status, just leave it where it is. Do not tax nonprofits. There's no point for that. Let us do our work. That's all. We're not picking a fight. I'm not here to pick a fight. We're here because we do not want to have restrictions from politicians on our decision of how to do our work, especially at a time when the government isn't doing what it needs to do to meet the needs of every community in this country.
Oh, that part. It's my very legal, eloquent way of saying it. And just to elevate it one step further, we're 100 days into dismantling everything we built for government to do some of these services. And now that they have literally dismembered public service, nonpartisan workers, put them out of jobs, even though what they're doing is delivering. But also saying government won't enforce rights. I'm just saying that to say, then they want to kneecap philanthropy. Think about that. Alexis, what does it mean to fight now in this time? What does solidarity mean and why do we need it?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, their strategy, I believe their stated strategy was flood the zone, right? Like this has been 100 days of chaos, of confusion, of cruelty, right? And that is by having us kind of ping pong back and forth. What is happening with immigrants? What is happening with patients? What is happening with school children? What is happening with protesters? What is happening with people who are standing up every day to defend this country? That flood the zone, I have to tell you, feels more like shock and awe. It feels like an entire war on civil society, an entire war on many of probably what we would call the shadow systems that hold communities together, that make up that civil society, that do the work, that show up every single day, unsung, largely unpaid, there just to be there because they know without those systems and structures, an entire civil society would fall apart. And I proudly stand there as part of Planned Parenthood, being a part of that community that does that. We have experienced some of the most direct attacks, whether that is the administration defunding Title X, which oftentimes has gone back and forth between administrations on a global gag rule related to abortion provision. But this time it wasn't actually about abortion. It was about DEI and providing care to people who don't have citizenship, denying access to basic contraception and healthcare because of DEI. So I'm going to say the words too, Becky Pringle, right? The idea that you want to take away access to healthcare because we have the audacity to have frontline providers who speak the same language as patients, right? Because we are fighting for improving health outcomes, right? That's all equity is reducing disparities and fighting for the belonging so that everyone walks into a health center knowing that there is a sense of belonging, a sense that they are truly being seen and they deserve to be seen. So when we see these attacks, whether that is the Medicaid attacks coming in Congress, and for many people, I think there are a lot of folks from kind of town halls that I've done in my Action Fund capacity. We're just connecting the dots between what Medicaid is for them, right? Wisconsin, it may be called Badger Care. In New York, it may be called Apple Care. They may have a program that they are relying on to get health insurance for their children. It may be called CHIPS, but they may not know it by that name, right? Or they may not recognize that is part of Medicaid. Talking to a superintendent who gets $20 million for the school, for the guidance counselors to be able to help families and children in those situations. So watching, communities like educators and healthcare workers and everyday parents and citizens who are coming into this work because they just want to take care of their families. They want to take care of their mother-in-law who has to go to hospice. They want to take care of their child who needs access to care. That is the solidarity that we are seeing in the community and the organizations that support them, because it's the same people who are putting us under attack, the same people who have taken control of these institutions. So our collaboration, which really has always been here all along, right? And the Leadership Conference has done a brilliant job of keeping us together. But the work that we're doing now to expand the coalition, to ensure that our, other people are sitting at this table, I think is that work. Because the only way we fight back against a shock and awe, right, is to stay on the ground and do that work and educate everyone about what is at stake right now.
Thank you. And Nick, really the same question back to you. You've had a unique, I'm not saying unique in the sense that it's going to stay limited, but you've had a specific experience around the abuse of this administration on nonprofits. Say a little bit more about that and tell us why then the solidarity matters.
Okay. Well, I will begin by saying that the solidarity matters because sitting at this table gives strength and courage. Also, I ate the same stuff for breakfast that Becky ate.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it to kick in. Becky did have 10 of the 12 Red Bulls that were in the green room. So, but I'll go to the store and get some myself.
Just remember, Nick, she made me go right after her.
Look, imitation is the best form of flattery, so we're right behind you, Becky. Let me talk a little bit, if I could, just about the story that Vera experienced, and it really is a story that I think goes from isolation to the kind of solidarity and strength and courage that I'm feeling increasingly every day, increasingly here on this panel. About a month ago, we received a termination notice for federal funding that Vera receives. Not especially unusual thing over the course of the past few months, but what became unusual to us was when we reached out to 25 other organizations in our sector and learned that none of them had experienced that we were the only ones and we had been singled out. And I believe that we got singled out, in fact, because we do say the words, because we are committed to racial justice, we are committed to fighting for immigrant rights, and that is an annoyance to this administration. So we had to stop and think about how to address this. We responded by writing a public letter to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, calling out the pretextual nature of those terminations and showing how it was contrary to any vision of safety, accountability, and justice in this country. 2 days after that, I received an email from a DOJ staffer who said that he wanted to be able to assign a DOJ team to the Vera Institute of Justice, which was perplexing and threatening and a little bit terrifying. Perplexing because, to our knowledge, DOJ had not been interacting with independent institutions. Terrifying because we've seen what that entity has done. So we again decided, we had a conversation with that staffer upon informing him that we no longer had federal funding. They said, okay, well, void, not an issue anymore. However, we believe as DOJ that we do have a right to engage with agencies and institutions that receive congressional monies. So that would be, again, the NGO sector that I talked about, all of these nonprofits doing the kind of work that I mentioned up front. So we decided again that it was important to stand up and to share this information. Sunlight is a disinfectant, but we also wanted to warn the field. So it has been a real journey, but I think we are at a turning point. We talk about shock and awe and flooding the zone, but I think that we are starting to see over the course of the last month, a crystallization of movement in communities of people who are impacted by what is happening, who are rising up in a variety of ways. Organizing in our sector, organizing across the broad NGO sector, and then organizing across these multiple sectors here. I think that things are changing, and I think that the American people see it too. There's been a spate of 100-day polls that show that much of what this administration is doing is quite unpopular. And as we continue to organize and to collaborate together, I think that we are pushing that boulder up the hill, and it is incredibly reassuring to be part of that.
Thank you. Lynn, we're coming back to you, and then we're going to go to Q&A. But same question. Higher ed's been under attack. Obviously, Harvard's been in the news. Mm-hmm. But what effects that has had, and what does solidarity mean? Why does it matter?
Mm. Well, in this post-truth era where controlling the narrative is often more important than the facts, higher education has been positioned as the enemy. And there has been a decoupling of higher education from the American dream in ways that position us as bastions of liberal progressivism intent on brainwashing the next generation of snowflakes, but also as tearing apart the fabric of American society. We need to create an ascendant narrative around higher education. It is clear that higher education continues to be the single most powerful socioeconomic driver for individuals, families, and for communities. I fear that we are at risk of perpetuating what Thomas Jefferson referred to as an unnatural aristocracy, where only the most privileged individuals have access to the transformational power of higher education. We have an initiative at AAC&U on truth, racial healing, and transformation. Our goal has been to establish 150 centers on campuses across the country aimed at jettisoning a belief in a hierarchy of human value and drawing on Gail Christopher's important work on racial healing. And many institutions have had to withdraw from this initiative because they can't use public funds to even come to our institutes, our meetings. What is at risk is a denial of access to individuals who are most underserved in our society. My colleague Sia Sheldon does work on cognitive bandwidth. She looks at the ways in which racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, other forms of discrimination actually reduce the capacity of students to learn in the classroom. We know that mental health issues, anxiety, depression, despair, have now surpassed financial considerations as the primary reason students are either not attending college or dropping out of college. All of these are factors. We have to push back against an attempt to eliminate the support services that will serve the broadest range of students, to create campuses that are spaces of welcome and belonging for everyone, for veterans, for students with learning differences, for those who are from a broad range of backgrounds. So this is what's at risk. Last week, AAC&U issued a statement, and it was a statement calling for constructive engagement, finding a way to move forward in collaboration toward our mission of serving the public good. We had 563 campus leaders sign on to this letter, talking about the need to not only work across institutional types, and there was broad representation, community colleges, research ones, HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, but to work across sectors with K through 12, with business and industry, with governing boards, and most importantly, with those in our communities, serving as anchor institutions, demonstrating that our success is intertwined with the educational, economic, health, and well-being of those in the communities in which we're located and those we seek to serve. If we don't create a kinship with those in our communities, we will not be able to create an ascendant narrative around what it is that we do.
Oof. All right. Becky has got a hard out, but because I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to share a call to action, we're going to go to questions. But before we do, and Becky, since you can stay till 10:10. See? Okay.
Just too good
The
a
Red Bull.
conversation, Maya.
It is actually Look. I have already learned in this conversation, and that I'm grateful for that. Well, let's do a quick then call to action round, because I want to make sure we get that in. In fact, it relates to one of the questions. Becky, I'm going to start with you, and we'll just do a quick call to action and go to questions. Go ahead.
I'm adding this. I'm sitting here taking notes as I'm listening to my colleagues on this panel. I hope you are too, because as an educator, one of the calls to action needs to be educate yourselves. I learned very quickly that we as a society don't know a lot about oligarchies and authoritarianism. We don't know that because we think we are exceptionalists. It's not going to happen to us. And by the way, the people from around the world are looking and saying, it's happening there? But they have lessons to teach us. And we need to learn. I highly recommend On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, to start there.
Who moved to Canada, y'all.
Well, yeah,
A little bit of an indicator there, just saying.
Right? Australia's having an election too, and everyone's using us as the example of don't do that. And its companion piece on freedom. Because one of the things that he says is that you need to understand all the things you just heard. Classic authoritarian moves. But you also need to know what you're not only what you're fighting against, but what you're fighting for. And you need to understand that. You need to be able to articulate what freedom looks like. So I highly recommend that too. So education, that's my number one call to action. And I literally need you to act. So text action to 48744. And that will give you a variety of resources and ways you can act at different levels of activism. There should be no one, including you, no one who likes you or loves you or intends to keep living with you who hasn't already made a phone call to elected leaders to say no. No, you will not cut Medicaid. No. No, you will not take resources away from our public schools. No, you will not try to voucherize and privatize every institution in this country. No. And you need to be making those calls every day. And everybody else. We need you to do that. Join us tomorrow on May Day. There are events all over this city and around the country. Join us. Call folks to join us.
Is there a place people can go to get that information?
Yes. Go to NEA.org/protect. It is a wealth of information about just about every issue that this panel covered. Ways you can continue to educate yourselves and ways you can take action.
Thank you. John?
I'm going to pick up on Becky's, seems like a good thing to do, pick up on Becky's thing, education and action. So if one part of education is educate yourself, I'll say educate others. Take that time with the people who love you and will listen to you, and even maybe people don't want to listen to you and don't always love you, to make the case for what we're talking about. And I think this point about, it happened to them or might come for them, I'll say from a field philanthropy, like we are not the front lines. We're pretty far back, and usually we don't get bugged because we've got money to give out and people are nice to us even when they shouldn't be. It's the truth. But like even for us, it could come for our 501c3 status, right? And so even if you don't think it's coming for you, make the case for what you do. Like we do good in every community in America. Make the case for that and stand up for it, whether you're doing it, receiving it, the beneficiary of it. I think that's the education piece. And then the act piece is do more. Just do more. I'm saying to my colleagues, like, if you are about to give X dollars, give X, 2X. Like, whoever we are, give more, ask less of others. There's just something we can do. And I hope we'll come back to this if there's time around the uniting. As a field, 500 plus of us, just like the universities, have signed onto a statement on the Council of Foundations. We don't do this. This is not what philanthropies do. But from across the ideological spectrum, people are saying, like, buzz off. This is private capital. Like, don't come over here. Let us do our thing. Again, we're not picking a fight. Just let us do our thing. That's what we're asking for, and that requires framing the issue and educating people, I think.
Thank you. I will say from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, first of all, there is a press conference in Atlanta that we are co-sponsoring with member organizations, Southern Poverty Law Center, Common Cause, LULAC, but it is exactly part of this. It is public education, people who are impacted by what's happened over the last 100 days, uniting and sharing their stories. That's in Atlanta at 11, and we've shared that information. Sign our pledge. Go to civilrights.org and sign the pledge. We have over 80 of our member organizations have signed the pledge to say we will not be silent. And we've talked about all the sectors because the us is all of us. It's a we. But we're not staying silent. We're asking everyone, people, to sign the pledge that says we won't be silent, because silence isn't about ideology. It's about stopping the ability for us to serve, support, share, build kinship, and make sure we're all getting all that we need. Alexis.
Yes, thank you. So I really appreciate the points on how little Americans know about tyranny. I would kind of take that a step further and say how little we know about how fragile our democracy is and where the real levers of power are and how we engage. And so we have been obviously, and I say this with my Action Fund hat on, very clearly moving forward for the next 15 months to be laser focused on what will happen in our midterms, right? That is one of the next real check and balance that we have to focus on. And it starts now, right? The next 6 months are about bringing together all of the people who have been impacted, naming all of the harms that have been done because of this administration and the inaction that we are seeing in Congress. And that means showing up in town halls. That means calling your members. That means showing up on protests. With all due respect for the incredible leadership that we have seen from some of our universities, I say that Harvard cannot be the face of our resistance, right? And I don't say that just because I went to Princeton and Yale. But because millions of people have been in the streets, right, through, thousands of distributed actions across this country, saying that this is not the world that they want to live in. This is not the America they want to live in. This is not the world that they want to see, where resources are ripped away from families and communities and educators and providers. And so we want to be super clear about the fact that that's the conversation that has to happen with our members, so they understand that our resistance can actually help give them the spine to develop the policies and the work that we need to see. So if you are a Planned Parenthood supporter, you can go to I'm4pp.org. We have 19 million supporters who are showing up and taking actions every week, every weekend, and we need to ensure that we continue to do that and grow our coalition with all of these incredible leaders.
Thank you. Nick?
My call to action is for nonprofit leaders, the executives of organizations, and the boards. And my plea to you is: do not wait to stand up. Do not wait and look to the left and look to the right for someone else to do it. Stand up. Stand up. Speak loudly. Speak boldly, and fight for our field. There's a conventional thinking that often intrudes in the way we run organizations, which is: how can we be distinctive? What is our strategy to deliver impact? How do we raise money for the work that we're doing? And we need to make a cognitive switch out of that mode into a mode to support the collective fight that we are all engaged in. That has to be our strategy. It is no longer a distraction to fight for our field. It is now mission critical. I want to say that the water is warm. It's not quite warm yet, but it is warming up. And there is a joy and a beauty in doing the right thing, in fighting for the right thing, and being surrounded by colleagues who pat you on the back and embrace you and say that they are down with you. So this is what we need. And the last thing that I would say is that the threat is real. There's been a lot of talk about executive orders coming out targeting climate groups, groups that are working on immigration to go after their C3 statuses. There was an executive order the first day of the administration that directed every agency to put together, let's call it hit lists, enemies lists of corporations, educational institutions, nonprofits, foundations that were egregious in their pursuit of REI. That deadline for those lists is coming up in May, so there is more bad stuff to come, and we need to be linked arm in arm.
We are building a pool. It's going to be heated, and it will not be segregated. Lynn?
I just will echo encouraging folks to use their voices. We issued the statement on Tuesday. On Friday, we got notification that our NSF funding was being eliminated. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not. In the conversations that we had with presidents, there were 193 who joined us over a 2-week period, and it was clear that exactly what Maya said. The risks, the threats are there. And we can either allow them to render us silent, or we can speak out, use our collective voice. And one of the presidents said, if each one of us exercises a little moral courage. No one has to be the hero.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And we must do
right.
that. So that's the call to action. Exercise a little moral courage, use your voices, and please draw on our resources and call on me anytime if we can support your initiatives.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left. I'll ask for us all to be quick. John, a specific question to you is about philanthropy, and will it keep funding the work that is diversity, equity, and inclusion? What do you think?
Thank you. Well, I intend to at MacArthur Foundation for sure. As I said, it's in our values, it's in our mission, so we intend to for sure. Let me be clear. I don't speak for all of philanthropy. There are philanthropists for whom this is not a
Sadly,
priority.
for many of us.
And in this wonderful way, I think it is the point that no one of us should be the face of this story. That in fact, it's the breadth and the diversity, by the way, and the excellence across a panel like this that comes from people from every walk of life and every background in our country. That's the story. That's the America I want to live in, and so we're going to keep funding that. Yes, we are. Now, is it in peril? Yes, it is. That's why we're here. So Nick mentioned an executive order on January the 21st, and it said all these agencies have to come up with their list of 9, and it could be foundations with assets of over 500 million. The 120 days runs on May the 21st. So between now and then, I think we have to frame the narrative. What do we mean by diversity? We mean this panel. We mean this room. We mean this America. That's what we mean. It's not that complicated. And in fact, it's the work, I think, that's at the core of the love of humankind, which is what philanthropy means. So yes is the answer to that question. We will until we're told to stop, and then we'll fight it in the courts or whatever we'll do. We'll figure that out on May the 22nd if we're on the bad person's list or whatever. But I think the window that we have is unite in advance. Don't obey in advance, unite in advance. You want to do this work, unite. And I think that courage is courageous, and it's contagious. And when people do stand up and find out that the water's warm and there are other people swimming in it and it's not a segregated pool, it's actually a really nice pool, and everybody's in, I think that's going to work. And I think between now, if you care about diversity, equity, inclusion, and whether philanthropies can fund it or NGOs can do it or corporations can have those programs, between now and May the 21st, make some noise, make the case. This is the point. Frame the narrative, and don't let somebody else frame the narrative.
Amen. Lynn, what should we take from Harvard University's decision to change the name of its DE&I office?
Having been a former college president, I don't ever question decisions that are made because I don't know the full context. This is a time of extraordinary moral distress on the part of campus leaders where they feel like they're being coerced into making decisions they believe are unethical, but they feel they have no choice. And in many instances, that moral distress has morphed into a kind of moral injury, which results from the continual erosion of one's moral compass. So each leader has to ask themselves, how much individual injustice are we willing to countenance for the sake of long-term reform?
Yeah.
For some, like Song Richardson, who withdrew from her position at Colorado College, it's none. For others, it's, if I leave this position, the institution will be in a worse situation. But in addition to the fiduciary responsibilities that individuals have, they also have a responsibility to the mission, vision, and values of that institution.
Thank you. And one last question. I think there was a two-parter, but I think you all have answered the collective action part of the question. The second one I think is an important and we've touched on, but I want to give you each an opportunity to speak to it. Why are some fields and institutions slower to work together? Anyone?
I'll start with that. We certainly hope that this convening demonstrates that we are moving past that. It's hard to collaborate. It is really, really hard, even when you have common values, and it takes time. And because of what the panel has already talked about, classic authoritarian strategies of chaos and confusion and speed and all of that, it's really, really tough to collaborate. But this is that moment where we must. And we have to do it for all the reasons we said. This is real. It is happening. It has already impacted in our classrooms, certainly across the country. But as I finish my remarks, it's always important for me, for us as unions, we were built for this moment. We will organize, we will mobilize, and we will win. We're built for this. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we have been doing, and that's what we're going to do. And it is absolutely essential that you hold on to what hope is, the belief in the plausibility of the possible. You have to have hope that we can and we will do this together. As I traveled all over this country, just got back, going from West Virginia to Kentucky, to Washington State, to California, Utah, all of these places, I have to tell you, I have never been prouder to call myself a teacher than I am in this moment. Educators all over this country doing the jobs they love, and then they're standing up and they're using their teacher voice to say, no, you will not take this from our kids. They are standing up and defying the threats to their funds. As I visited a dual immersion classroom, speaking English and Spanish, they were having an ethnic studies class when they knew that executive order had already come out, that their very funding could be threatened. But they did it anyway. That is what's happening across this country. So I need you, with all that we just laid out, the real threats, to understand that together, we not only will win this fight, but we will work for this country to live into the poetry of its Constitution. We the people, we the people, we the people, all of us deserve that right. All of us, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as long as we keep that vision, as we're fighting like hell, we will be fighting forward. Thank you so much, Maya, for inviting me to be here.
And we out. I think I just join me in thanking this powerful panel of leaders. The lessons are clear. We are in this together. We are working together. We will not be silenced. We will not stop doing what we do for people, and we will win. Amen. Thank you.
Here we go.